dashes between words and not camel case. And this also applied to also files and also folders. I saw like in different companies that they do the folders in camel case and the files in lowercase. So this is like the first taste of the first tip. Name your files and folders in lowercase. Second tip. Okay, you can read. It's Arelina na Rakotomo na Macarena. So yeah, so suffix your files, give them the good last names. Okay, so you won't stumble. Okay, so what do I mean by that? If we're talking about the Angular word, okay, you see MDL for modules, okay, control CTRL from controls. TPL, DRV, you have more, SRV for services, constants, and such. Why? Why should we do it? So it's easier to read at first sight. The first thing, I look at the file structure, I know, okay, this is the control, I don't have to look inside, I don't have to guess. I just see what's inside the folder. It's essential for automation and filtering. We'll talk about it in a later slide, but it's easier to scan, like if we're using tools like Grunt. Anyone use Grunt? Okay, great. So we can filter out files with this tool, and we can filter out all the controllers and such. So it's an easier way. Shorten the names and decision time. So I don't have to worry or think every time when I create another controller if I add a controller there or something like that, or a service. I just know that I have this type and it's the common convention. Okay, so tip number 3. There can be only one component per file. Okay. What do I mean by that? Okay, if we have a component, it's a controller or service or a module even. If we have a controller, it should sit in its own file and not, because I saw controllers.js or services.js, and in large scale project, it doesn't hold up. Okay, so just put here like an example, and this is like needy controller that doesn't get inside because we have only one. Why? Makes it easier to locate components. We can search for, although we have tools like WebStorm, we can search, but we don't have to guess if it's in that controller's file or that controller file. It just make it easier. Keep your files shorter. So this is another principle in code to make files as much shorter as you can, because you don't want to look at files that are 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 lines of code. Less conflicts. If we're working in a team and we work with Git or SVN or whatever, everyone has his own file. Is there a file moving or refactoring the project? You don't have to extract on the fly. We just it makes it much easier. So tip number 4. Think in states. Okay, what do I mean by that? Just put it like, okay, different state of the sofa. Okay, anyone who uses UI router in Angular? Great. So not a lot of people.
Não
should
dói?
use UI router. UI router. Anyone who uses routes in Angular?
Aquela bronca.
Okay. So not a lot of people use. Anyone use Angular? Okay. Great. No. So let's go home. Okay. Yeah. So UI router makes your job much easier to think about the code, okay? To think about the application. So it's the architect, call it the architect's best friend. Why? Because it breaks your design to pairs of control and templates. When you get a design or you have an idea to build like your own app, and you think, okay, I will have like a bar
Kadar o
and this
UI
section
router.
of the product and this section of the user account and such. You start, when you use it, you start to think about your app in terms of, okay, this will be a state and this will be its sub-state, and when I go to here, it will be another state, and it simplifies your job in a great deal. So, and another one, this is just a tip, use dynamic routing. If to anyone who uses the UI router, you can see I put here like a dynamic variable. So that way you can say, also you can change the template URL to a function. So you can load on the fly templates and based on parameters, and don't like, it saves you a lot of time. Okay, tip number 5.
Garus.
Also, by the way, I forgot to mention in the start, I wrote the headline of this lecture before I wrote the lecture. So I wrote it in. So you might find like tips that aren't really technical. Okay, so folder structure. Okay, we talked about naming convention, file system naming convention. Let's talk about folder structure, because by the way, all the tutorials we see on Angular in the beginning, we see like a really naive folder structure of views, scripts, and we put like what I mentioned before, the controller.js and services.js, and everything is happy. It's okay if you build like one page application, one page and one state application, and just one button, and it's okay, it will hold up. But when you start to build a larger scale application, it doesn't hold up. So I divide my projects to common and core. What do I mean by that? So the core is the app, I call it app sections. Okay, so or states, what I told you about before with the UI router. So you can imagine the state sections of the application. Okay, the top bar, the different section you go inside when you click. So this is belongs to the core. The common is everything that gets repeated through the core. So if we have services that we need to inject to our controllers in the different sections, we put it in the common. If we have directives, it's just we can put here constants and stuff, but just an example. Okay, we have directives that are repeated throughout the application, we put it in the common. So this is like a way to put it. If we have nested states, to the one who uses a UI router, I saw that people use a flat folder structure. I use a hierarchy. So if I have nested state, I put like here, product details, it's part of the products state. I put it inside the products folder. So that way I know which belongs to which. Tip number 6. Okay, really fast. I think I named her Sarah. I'm sorry, but the name is already taken. However, you can still have Sarah4343 or Sarah_12. Namespace in components. Okay. So what do I mean by that? If we name our controllers my control, okay, it doesn't give us a lot of options to have like diversity. We need to namespace. We need to prefix it with some kind of package that this controller or service or directive or whatever belongs to. So what I do, I just put here like the folder structure. If it's under scripts, core, main, etc. So I have here. I first start with the module name. Okay, the module that this component belongs to, as you see here, the module my app, and then I follow the folder structure. Okay, so and this is in camel case because inside of JavaScript it's like directives. Okay, when we have in the HTML with dashes, and we have inside of JavaScript with camel case. So this is the way I do it, and it helps me avoid collisions because, for example, if we take a third-party module like UI Bootstrap or something like that, and we inject our service the same name, it will run over our dependencies and we couldn't use it. So it helps us avoid it. So it prevents duplicate names, protects third-party libraries, and it shows the file location. So
Ну,
although I
какой-то
could see
тащится
that I can
оригиналист.
have tools like WebStorm to see it, but from the code I can see the file location because it's a convention. Also, it we must use the array form of injection. As you know, we can just put in the function scope without an array, but
Дел только
here I
другие
put
подари.
the array just
Ну,
to
с
illustrate,
директивой.
because when we put it with dots, we can really inject it as parameters to the
Не,
to
тут
the
директор
function.
скоро прощается.
So we can just take the last word. If we had like a service, we just take the last word and inject it as a parameter. Okay, tip number 7. Keep everything together. Not really related. Okay, so what do I mean by that? If we have a state or we have a directive, and directive breaks apart to a directive and a template and maybe a test and maybe a CSS or SCSS or less or something like that, we put everything in the same folder. Okay, we don't put stuff like templates in a template directory or views directory because it will get lost. Okay, when we scale up. Oh, I just want to see that again. No, not really used to that. Okay, so it's easier to find related files. If I'm working on, usually when I work on a state, I work on the controller and the template together. So it's make it easier to find the related files, also the CSS. Anyone here work with the main.css file, like thousand of lines? No. Yes? No? Yes? Okay. People, I'm shy and see people also shy. Okay. So so also the CSS, we'll talk about it in a minute. So prevent file duplication. If we have a folder with hundreds of files that call views, it makes it harder if someone didn't follow the naming conventions and called it smart tree and smart tree template and called it something else, we have duplication. So it helps us if it is in the same folder and you have like 5 files, you won't miss it usually. Prevent folder structure duplication. Okay, if people are coming from Java, the Java world, we have Maven there and main and test, and you have to keep up with the same folder structure. So if you have views in some point, you have like a duplicate folder structure. You have like all that we saw before, the core, the common, we need to duplicate. So it prevents us from duplication. Okay, I will talk how to make it possible in the latest slide. Tip number 8. Okay, you'll see it's a crab that takes out part of its arm and yeah. So separate the models. Okay. This is an advanced tip. If you're just starting out with Angular, stick to one module. Okay, this is your application. But to the guys who already work with Angular, try to separate stuff to contextual modules. What do I mean by that? So if you have, we saw before, common services, you have a services module. If you have like a state that it's a large section in your application, like like account management, okay? So I will have the account module, and in the same convention, I will call it by its the main application module, like here, okay, and then the file system folder. But this will be my module. So if I have the user section in the application, and I have a user control, it will take the user control module, and I will set it up on top of the user module. Why? Faster for unit testing. Anyone does unit tests here? Nice. It's better statistics than in Israel. So I'm happy, okay? But it's not enough, okay? So faster for unit testing. When you unit test your code, you usually, in each test in Angular, you load the whole context of the module it's a fresh start. So if you divide, if you have like a one big module that have a lot of the, services and controls defined on top of it, you load it each time and it makes your test slower. So if you divide it, you load only your, like if you test the user control, you load only this its module and it's make it much faster. By the way, if you have questions, okay, to ask me in the middle. You don't have to wait to the end if you have a question. Okay, it gives context. You see when you code, you see, okay, which part am I in? Because maybe sometime you inside the code or somebody names something not really relevant to what it is, and it happens. So you can see which module am I, and or you can look in the file folder, which makes it easier. Easier to remove parts from the app. If we use the UI router and each module defines its own state. So let's imagine we have like I don't know, a portal or a big website that have like I don't know, like eBay, okay? And we have car sales and apartment sales. I don't know, okay? Just making it up now. And if we want to move out the car section, we just remove its module and the link to the module and all the files contained in that module. We don't have to nitpick everything.
Excuse me,
yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Let's say my application is auto-discoverable, right? On the first launch, I don't know what modules I might use. So as I look for, I don't know what to do how to do a module inject after my application is already bootstrapped.
Yeah.
So I didn't find any issues on that.
Yeah, so it's a big issue in Angular. What you asked is about how to lazy load another section of the application. Yeah. So you have a hack, okay? You can use a hack, which we'll not go into now, but we'll talk. It's like link the provide.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I get the providers and then inject them into.
Currently, this is the only way you can do it, but they are planning to make it part of the 2.0, so you can lazy load stuff using the new APIs, new JavaScript API, ECMAScript 6.
Yeah.
So, by the way, you asked a question. You deserve a shirt.
Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, yeah. Do you have a question? Okay. So, tip number 9. Take a shower at least once a week. Okay, it's not technical. Okay, just to make friends in the office. Okay, tip number 10. Auto-generate file linking. It's magic. Okay. So this is a tip. It's really one of my favorite because you know when you want to add another file to your index.html, you go to the index.html and add a script tag or a CSS link and stuff like that and blah 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 blah. Then you change the file name and then you have to go back. So you can use a wonderful tool called Grunt. Okay, and you have a Grunt plugin called include source, and you can just write a comment that recursively search for the file you define and add and create a script that's for you. So you can really shorten your development time for that. And it's really easy. So you see before I talked about the module, the filtering and stuff. So in Angular, if you define the module after you define some controller who is on top of that module, you get an error. You need to define the module before, so it will know what to look for. So that way, I can load the module file before recursively, and then add all the other script dependent on that module after it. So, and it doesn't load duplicates, so it knows how to filter out the diffs. And I see here the exclamation mark. It doesn't load all the test files. So that way I don't, make sure when the result of this compilation, it's another index HTML. So make sure you put it in the temp folder and exclude it from Git if you work with Git. Just a short tip. Okay, tip number 11. Yeah, this is data from Star Trek. Unit test your code. Okay, we talked about it. So it's just a general recommendation. Unit test your code. I have here like a few tips for people who already test. So it's really easy to test in Angular. It's the easiest from all the other frameworks because the Mishko who wrote Angular wrote it with testing in mind. It came from the testing board and they made it really, really easier. So the simplest test is, I define what the test should do and I expect it to do something. Let's talk about Given. So the main reason I test my code, it's not for testing, it's for better architecture. It's really for better engineering because you can't really write unit tests if you didn't separate stuff to smaller parts, if you don't write modular code, if you don't write clean code. So it makes you write better code. So if anyone have like a decision whether to unit test or not unit test or don't get my recommendation is invest the time and learn. It's not that much of a time. So first, it's also faster bug tracking, of course. It's because in JavaScript we don't have compiler that save us from bugs. Okay, we usually the bugs the user see. Okay, if we're not careful. So it doesn't catch all the bugs, only the unit this unit bug. But for other stuff we need end-to-end test. But it makes our life a little bit easier. If you already test your code and don't use Jasmine Given, and you use Jasmine, take a look at this project. It also separates your tests into really, really logic parts that make more sense. Like given that the list is empty, when user click on something, expect the list to be full. Okay, this is the correct way to structure the test. Also, this project have another, usually what return like duplicate code in test is the when part, like when the user clicks, because we always set up something and test the result, set up something else that test a different result, but the action keep repeating itself. So Jasmine Given allows us to write the action one time and duplicate, and it will run in its place, in the right place. So, and TDD, okay, TDD, it's test-driven development. It's write your test before you write your code, okay? If you are going into unit testing, make sure you're going to TDD from the start. I never met a company that says, okay, we'll test later, and actually test later, okay? Usually you have deadlines, and you don't have time to test. So make sure you do it from the start. Make your manager do it and invest the time. If you didn't start with testing, make sure you put it as an incremental habit. So if you have sprints in your company and you work like in 2-week sprints, if you're a manager, make sure one of your developers, at least one, do one service test per sprint. Just start slow and slowly increment the stuff you test. Don't say like, okay, one day we will test all of our stuff. It won't happen, and because we code what the marketing team promise, right? So they always promise like, okay, it will be done in 2 days, right? So and it won't. So we don't have time to really test and save us a lot. Tip number 12. Okay, so manage your packages with Bower. No. Okay. No? No Bower? So we'll find another better solution in a minute. Okay. NPM. Yeah. So I will talk about Bower and then we'll hear about another solution. So Bower, okay? Who uses Bower here? Okay, so the other guys who don't use Bower, you should use any dependency management solution, dependency meaning packages, third-party packages like jQuery, Angular, stuff like that in your project. Because these days, we don't really use only our code. We always use some third-party plugin or framework and stuff. So no more manual downloading. Bower is a tool that you define one file, bower.json, you define your dependencies. If I need Angular, which version of Angular do I need? If I need REST Angular, which is another Angular project, or I don't know, you can define and just hit on the command line power install, or in WebStorm power install, and you get all of these dependencies in one folder. And it's consistent and really good, and save you the manual downloading. Also, it gives you a lighter project source, so you don't have like all your dependencies and their source file. You can upgrade dependency more easily, because if we have Angular 1.1 and we want to upgrade to 1.2, just upgrade, change the file and power install, and we have the next version. We don't have to go to the website and figure out what to do. Okay. If you want to go back, also, it's really, really easy. Helps you avoid making local changes. Okay. So in the old way, what we do, we have all the dependency in our project, and we have a bug in some, I don't know, REST Angular, okay, and we want to fix it, okay? So we fix it in our local repository, and then other people in our team, want to download it, and they need to fix conflicts in the third-party package. And why do I need to fix jQuery code? I don't want to, deal with it. So what you can do, Bower works really, really great with GitHub. Okay, so you can just, and most of, if not 99% of the projects are on GitHub. So you can just fork the project, fix the bug, do a pull request to the original project, so when they will want, they will integrate it. But you have the option in Bower to point to your GitHub name, like your company GitHub name or personal GitHub name, to the project and a specific commit, like the hash of the commit, and it will pull that version of your fix. So it makes it easier to do bug fixes for third-party stuff. And you have like a ground plugin that do automatic Bower install if it's a command line launcher and stuff. So usually when we work in a team and someone changed the Bower JSON, something that doesn't work because we didn't do Bower install, so it makes it every time, I don't know. You can also use maybe Git hooks and stuff like that to make it automatic. So every time we launch our project with Grunt, it will first Bower install our dependency. Okay, tip number 13. Use promises, okay? Who knows about what promises are? Nice, okay. So, promises. I won't dive into it, okay? There are a lot of lectures about promises. Angular uses heavily the concept of promises in Q. So basically what promises are a way to work asynchronously with objects instead of callbacks, or event listeners and stuff. So the old way was to use callbacks, okay, for something to return from Ajax and stuff. And in that way we can just use objects, okay, and put our callbacks on those objects that call promises. Okay, I wonder if I just put it so you can see the slide later and see how you can custom create your own promises. But everything in Angular, when you use $HTTP or use $timeout or use anything asynchronously, sorry about the hard word, you use actually promises. Okay, so it's a good concept to know. prefer promises over callbacks. So this is a convention that I use. It's a suggestion. Everything I say here is only a suggestion. It's from my experience. If you have a better experience, you're welcome to share it. So the ING convention. When we go I would call it async. Okay, async. So we always like waiting for something. So we have a convention to add ing, like getting user, reading stuff, okay? So it implies in clean code, another principle is to make sure you choose names that make sense for the other developers, so they will know what they're getting. So if we have a service, okay, that, I don't know, updates product or updates a username or a user, so if we want to really like give a hint about what this function does, we can add like get user promise. So the other developer can know that it's getting a promise and not a user. If we only put get user, you have to guess if it's a promise, if it's a, I don't know, an object, if it's a list, I don't know. So we can use get user promise, or we can use this convention, getting user. So that way he knows it's a hint that he will be getting a promise. Clear indication you're getting a promise is what I just said. Tip 14. Don't stir, it's okay. Tip 15. Okay. Maintain a single responsibility principle in services. Why did I put a duck in a vacuum cleaner? I don't know. But no, it's because the vacuum cleaner needs to clean up your apartment and not ducks. Okay, so what is single responsibility principle? It's another principle from the clean code. It's for you to make sure your component does only have one field of responsibility. You don't have user services file, you have a user service file. You don't have a controller that does everything in the world. You have like a specific controller for this specific view that's only in charge of that view. So why? So each service, this is in services, we see that it's not only in services, one responsibility. It's better for testing, okay? Because usually when we have one responsibility, we have its dependencies. So we have a service independent on other services, right? And if we do testing, we need to mock those dependencies so they wouldn't run or get initialized. So if we have another responsibility, usually it means we have another dependency or other dependencies, and it makes it harder because we need to mock everything out. So it's better for testing, better for modular bucket. For modules, okay? So because we can put things together that make sense being together because we have single responsibility. And it's not only for services, but it's the most common because usually most of our code will be in services. But you can do it also, you must maintain for directive and control. Tip number 16. Okay. What you mean you ain't seeing me? Maybe you ain't looking hard enough. So this is my impression of Afro-American woman. Compass your bootstrap. Okay. So what is Compass, SAS, LESS? Anyone uses this stuff? Okay, for the guys, don't use anything. Okay. So it's a higher level language about CSS. Okay, you write better CSS. So SAS, Compass, LESS. Compass, it's a mixing project above SAS. And SAS and LESS are pretty much the same with slightly different in syntax and stuff. Basically, it makes you write like easier CSS and it gets compiled. We won't get into its features, but you have this feature, which is it's a lovely feature that you can give context to your CSS. You can give another class name, and it will add this class name to each of your definition. So that way, if you have a user box directive, you can namespace all of its styles under the user box, and then you don't have collision with other stuff. So this is the wrapping. It's faster and easier CSS development because it lets you use variables and mixins and other stuff to save you writing the same stuff or copy pasting and changing and stuff like that. And my tip is when you use Bootstrap, if you use Bootstrap, it's the most common CSS framework. Don't touch it if you need to make changes, okay? Use Bower or another tool of package management, but don't touch it. Do an override from the outside. In SAS, you can define your variables before you load up Bootstrap, and then it will run over all of the Bootstrap default variables. And that way, you can upgrade more easily your Bootstrap dependency. What I showed you before, break it to small files. So in the directive, in the user box directive, I have the user box SCSS or CSS or less or stuff like that, and you do it with run also, or Gulp or any other tool. Okay, you do it with an automatic tool that scans all your folders, concatenate all your files into one file, and that file only you compile to system. That makes your job much easier than looking for your style in a main CSS of 4,000 lines of code to the same context file. Tip number 17. I swear that I will come with the try your directive. Try means don't repeat yourself. Another principle, okay? Reuse your code. So, okay, so before I start explaining that, I see in companies every time, same thing. People say, okay, I learned about this new tool called Directive. Let's introduce him to all the services in the application, and we'll know everything, and we'll know the scope, and the controller scope, and the global scope, and everything like that. And that way you miss the point of directive. Directives should be reusable, should know nothing about the outside application. That way you can pull it out, stick it in another application, and it will work. And this is the goal you want to achieve. So how do you do it? You do it with isolated scope. So anyone who written directives in his life knows that if you put an object, you get isolated scope. So you don't interfere with the scope above you. So that way you can define the properties that you want to link with the outside scope, like user module. And you can do like, I call them like events or callbacks with an ampersand that you can notify the outside scope that something happened and pass like information using the ampersand. So it's a clear public API. So when you have a clear public API, you have like a tree, okay? A directive that you can use, JS3 or something like that. And you can really, in a really easy way, indicates, okay, it gets a tree model. When a tree item gets clicked, I will know about it, and I will get that tree item module. And the way I use it is to use a comment. I didn't have a space here, but it should be right beside it. A comment that indicates if you use it, you know that you can pass parameters like here. User click, on click, this is the function on the parent scope, and you can pass in the user, okay, that you have on the scope. So usually I add like a comment params to indicate which parameters you should pass when you use this directive, okay, so you wouldn't have to look inside the code. Inject only private services. So if you have a directive that is have a lot of code, and you want to make it shorter because it's another principle, like I said before, to make your file shorter, you can divide it to services. Services are a great way. You don't need to inject it in all the places in the application. You can use it as a tool to modularize your code better. So if you have a huge directive, you can add in the same folder, as I showed you, in the same component folder, another service that have part of its logic, and this directive injected and use it. Better for testing, better for all the reasons I told before. But don't inject public services like application-wide services into a directive. Then you make it dependent on these services and dependent on this application. You can't really reuse it. If it's a third-party directive that you build as an open source, it's okay. Like a Google login button that knows the Google service. It makes sense. It's the same context. Okay. Tip number 18. Build with Grunt. Okay. We'll talk about what it is. So Grunt is a modular automation tool. Okay. So you can build your application. You can develop. You can compile your SAS files, link your files. You can do any of these operations automatically. Okay? If you don't use Grunt, use it. Or use some of its competitors. Yeah.
What's your opinion about Gulp?
Okay, I will get to Gulp. Okay? In a second. So you when you working on an application, you want to do all the build tasks like concat, minify, revisioning your file for caching, optimize your images, all this stuff you need to do when you deploy your application. So Grunt helps you do it. If you want to save time, you can use Yeoman. Okay, anyone heard about Yeoman? Great. So you can use Yeoman. You know that when you generate an Angular application, you get a Grunt file. So you can use this file as a base because it's missing some of the tasks that you want to use extra. To go to my site, I will put like videos about it and stuff. You can update. I won't get into this now, but use it as a base to build your application. If you have a build machine or continuous delivery and stuff, okay.
It wasn't turned on all the time.
Like this.
I was out. So let's start over. Okay, so anything tips? Nice.
Let me introduce myself.
Let me introduce myself. I'm shy. So yeah, so it's pretty much yeah, graceful. So it's all on the build machine. If you use a continuous delivery or deployment or stuff like that, or integration, make sure you install it. You don't have to use Node as your backend. I got all these questions from companies. So I need to use Node? No, you don't have to use Node. You just install it on the build machine. Have a look also at Gulp. Great question. Okay. So Gulp is another tool that does what Grunt does, but in a more like easier way. Okay. This is what its purpose is, to make Grunt easier, to make all the automation tests running easier. It isn't as mature as Grunt. It doesn't have the amount of plugins that Grunt have, but if you want to look further into the future, you should start looking at Gulp now and start learning it and start playing with it, because it's a really good competitor and replacement for Grunt, because Grunt have a tendency to be complicated. Okay, bonus tip. At the office, stay away from that guy, which usually is me. Okay, so more pleasure. This is my website.